You're listening to The Rich Life Revolution with me, Michelle Cooper. My mission is to empower you to step into your next level of wealthy. You'll hear all the deets, a little bit of inspiration, and real life takeaways so that you can create your own rich life revolution. Let's dig in. Welcome back to The Rich Life Revolution. I'm Michelle Cooper, your host, and welcome to episode 4. I am super excited to be talking with our guest today, Doemner. Caitlin is a world traveler, an author, a business coach, a mom, a wife, all the things that we all are. And for 2 years, Caitlin, her husband Michael, and their 3 young children traveled around the world, crossing multiple continents. From 2021 to 2022, this jet-setting family explored 4 continents. Back when my kids were young, I couldn't make it 100 miles in my car with 3 kids. So I don't know how Caitlin and Michael traveled across 4 continents with 3 young kids, but we're going to hear all about it on this episode. So let's dive in and get all the tips and tricks straight from Caitlin, who is living proof that prioritizing travel can be life-changing and glamorous, but it can also be a little tricky in your work-life balance, some self-discovery along the way, and for sure a lesson in going with the flow. So you and I met, several years ago. I was working. I had a job, right? Working for somebody else while I had my business. At that point, I had like 3 full-time jobs, I feel like. And, you were a participant in a coaching program that I was a coach in. I can remember we went through several experiences. I helped facilitate breath work for you and your husband, David Mailer's network chiropractic sessions. Like there was some deep stuff going on there. Hey?
Yes. And that's actually where it was at one of those events where Michael and I sat down and we said, okay, if we're going to build our business, what's the point? And that was the first time that we wrote down that we wanted to travel the world with our kids. So it was at one of those retreats that we were at that I got the first spark that I wanted to do this.
So magical. So let's catch everybody up. Tell us a little bit about you and your family, what you guys do, like all the things that are Caitlin and Michael and your kids.
That is a really broad statement. So our brand for our travel is All Over the Map Family. So you can find us on Instagram at All Over the Map Family because we not only are digital nomads, but we have extremely diverse interests. And so we have our business coaching for coaches and consultants and healers called Ecstatic Business School. Michael is starting a hedge fund. I write children's books. I write books on, we have a book called Sex Every Day. So it is all over the map, the things that we love and the things that we do. And one of the things that I think Michelle wanted to bring us on is talking about our world travels. So we kind of made a commitment that we would take our 3 kids and see all 7 continents. And at first it was going to be a 1-year thing, and then it was going to be a 2-year thing. And then 2 years in, we decided that's only halfway through. So now it's going to be a 4-year thing, continue to grow and become a lifestyle for us.
So where was the first place that you guys decided to plant your feet on?
Well, we decided it was just after COVID. It was 2021, almost exactly 2 years ago. And we decided we should probably introduce the kids to the US before we leave. So we did a 6-week road trip up to Yellowstone, through Nashville, up to Washington, D.C., down to Miami, and kind of gave them a lay of the land of their own home country. And then we sold our van in Miami and jumped down to Mexico and did the Yucatan Peninsula down through Guatemala and Belize. And my kids climbed so many Mayan ruins that they were like, please, Mom, not another Mayan ruin.
That was like me in Peru. I had elevation sickness, but I was like, if I have to look at more old rocks, I might like poke my eyeballs out with a fork. And everybody is like, ooh, ah. And I felt so sick. I was like, you guys go. I'm just going to sit here. Like, I can't look at any more ruins.
Yeah. Yeah. So we glutted them on Mayan ruins. Then we went to the Galapagos and got violently ill in Ecuador. So we sort of had an intermission in Ecuador for 4 weeks, just got to enjoy keto and civilization again. And things like grocery stores got to be very exciting. And then went down through Paraguay and in Argentina because, yeah, Peru and Chile were really locked down for COVID still. Peru was requiring 2 face masks and a face shield for anybody over the age of 2. Chile was requiring vaccinations for children. And we're like, okay. So we went to the East Coast instead, and we spent 90 days doing tango and Mendoza Malbecs and seeing their icebergs and Bariloche, and just really enjoyed Argentina much more than we ever thought we would. And that got us to the bottom of the world. And then we jumped off the bottom of the world and set sail for Antarctica. And so we got to do a 2-week cruise through Antarctica. And my daughter turned 10 on Antarctica. So we claim she's the first female to turn 10 on the continent of Antarctica. The start of her Wikipedia page. It's going to be epic.
That sounds like a TED Talk moment.
Right? And yeah, Antarctica was one of our kids' favorites. They got run over by penguins and got to see orca whales. It was so fun. Then we headed east and we got stuck in the South Korean airport for 5 days, reenacting our own personal version of the Terminal movie with Tom Hanks. And then we got to finally go to Cambodia, which had lower COVID restrictions, and then Thailand, and then Bali and the Philippines. So we kind of did the Southeast Asian tour. And then we road tripped down Australia from Cairns. We got to scuba dive in the Great Barrier Reef and then make our way all the way down to Sydney, where we got on the Harbour Bridge. And then we came home for a 9-month sabbatical. We had both of our mothers had some health crises that we got to see them through, and they're now safely on the other side of. And so now we get to head out for the second leg starting in a couple of weeks. We're doing Europe, Africa, and India. And so we've probably got anywhere from 18 to 24 months left to see those continents as well. And yeah, it's been an amazing experience getting to see so much of the world with our what was 5, 7, and 9. And by the time we're done, they'll be 9, 11, and 13. So yeah, it's going to be a very cool stretch for them.
That's amazing. So, you're an entrepreneur, right? You have your business. And I'm thinking about, all the travel, and I travel a lot, right? And for me, it's a bit hard to work and travel because I want to so be in the moment of where I am, right? I don't want to take any time away from my eyes seeing all the things. And so I made a decision at some point, because pre-COVID, I was traveling for David Bear's business 1 week out of every month, traveling, speaking, all the things. And I decided I'm not going to work while I'm traveling because it was too hard for me to juggle. So tell me how that was for you. How did you balance all of this? Because I'm sure you got to make some money along the way, right?
Yes, of course. People are are you independently wealthy? We're no, we just have an internet connection. So yes, right. Wi-Fi is necessary. It's the first thing we check on Airbnbs. We make them take a screenshot of the speed test at their location that we want to rent. No, I think the biggest thing is recognizing most people travel for vacation, and it does make sense to have really strong boundaries. This is when I'm working. This is when I'm not working, and to be wholly present. What we very quickly had to realize is that this was not vacation. This is just, we happen to be living in a different country. So When we first started, it was a very fast pace because we were on vacation mode. We have to see everything and we have to see it now. And so we were changing locations every 3 to 5 days. And I think that's why we crashed in Ecuador. It was the first time where we didn't have an itinerary booked. And so we just kind of slept and did nothing for 4 weeks. And we're okay. So we need to go slow. So now we're at each location for a minimum of 2 weeks. And that gives us time to travel, to unpack, to have a couple days of hurried sightseeing while we check off all the bucket list items. And then about a week and a half where we just and the big adventure is walking to the coffee shop or going to the post office and things like that, where it's just doing life in a different location. And so that really helps us to recognize, we were thinking we only have 30 days in India as the current visa if we don't apply for a longer one. And I was we can't see all of India in 30 days. And I realized most people, that's 4 weeks is like their whole year's cycle of travel. And we're like, no, that's like only 2 cities. Like we're only going to see 2 things while we're in India at our pace. So it's a different rhythm. It's a different pace. And just recognizing, because we homeschool the kids. So we have time for homeschool. We have time for work. I would say one of the biggest advantages is that I have a long history of workaholism. Like I genuinely love what I do and the people that I work with. And so when I'm at home and like the kids are on summer vacation right now, and I'm just like, nobody really needs me. Like Michael's making sure that they're surviving. They've got enough food to live on. Like this is what feeds me and I want to be doing it first thing when I wake up, last thing before I go to bed. So traveling has been really helpful for me to fight against that natural tendency and to create boundaries. So time zones. When we were in Asia, we only had like 2 hours a day, like 1 hour in the morning at 8 a.m. or 8 p.m. You could choose because we were 12 hours off from the US.
Right.
So I could only take 2 meetings a day. And when we're in Europe, I might get 4 meetings a day in for like synchronous face-to-face time. So it forces me to be really intentional about narrowing down, because I don't know whose law it is, but your work expands to the time you give it. So if you have 12 hours, you'll work 12 hours.
Parkinson's
if you have 2 hours,
law.
Parkinson's law. Yes.
Parkinson's
if
law.
you have 2 hours, it will only take 2 hours. So recognizing that when I'm abroad, I just have fewer hours, and miraculously everything that needs to get done gets done.
Yeah, that's crazy, right?
Yeah. And also the fact that like, yes, there is this big, beautiful city calling my name. It is much sexier than my backyard here at home. So it's easier for me to maintain those boundaries and say, nope, it's time for me to go for a walk in nature, to go see a new site, to take my kids to an art museum or a science museum, and really make time for that, because it feels like we have this tight window, which, you know, we only have 70 to 100 years. Like if we think of this in the cosmic scheme, we all only have a few moments to enjoy all that this earth has to offer. But it feels a little different when you know you've got a 2-week window instead of a 2-decade window. But yeah, so that's been helpful for me as just giving me a frame for really seeing my life and my world and being intentional about what I'm going to put in that frame and what I'm going to leave out of it.
What was your biggest fear when you and Michael thought about doing this?
So funny. My only panic moment came when we left Mexico and I realized I no longer had access to Amazon Prime. Wait, I can't order anything I want and have it delivered in 2 days flat.
Right.
Like, I have to walk into a store and they may or may not have the thing I'm looking for. And they certainly won't have 10 different options. So I can price check and do a review on it before I make my buying decision. And then I'm going to have to like carry it back home. And what if I need to return it? Like, it was just hysterical to me that like Amazon had become my umbilical cord. I was like, right. And I was like, so we needed to buy everything before we left. And then we realized we way overpacked, and the rest of the world does survive without Amazon having instant access to everything on the planet any moment of any day. So it was helpful for me to remember like, oh yeah, you may not find the exact brand or version of the thing that you want, but you will find an acceptable substitute and you will survive and it will be okay. So I think resiliency for myself and for the kids has been the number one thing. We were always adaptable, but now we're really adaptable. And that resiliency is kind of coded into our family DNA at this point.
That's amazing. Your kids must have just such a broad experience of the world, like a mindset that I think the average kid their age wouldn't have, right? Like they've seen parts of the world that things are very different, right?
Yeah. Speaking of fears, one of the things we talked about was like, well, we don't know how the kids are going to turn out. Like this is a 20-year sociology experiment that we're using our own children to test out. Right. They're going to either be like fantastically well-adjusted or just like hermits with agoraphobia and cats.
Right.
And so I think the first feedback that I received was my daughter at one of her school programs, one of her projects was, talk about a time when you didn't belong. Like, what is belonging? When do you fit in? When do you not fit in? And she's like, Mom, I can't think of a time when I didn't belong. And I'm like, I'm sorry. You've been to 25 countries. They did not look anything like you. They did not eat the same food. They definitely did not speak the same language. How is it possible that you don't have a memory of not belonging? And she's like, well, they're all human. And it was just like this mind-blowing moment where my daughter defines herself as human. And if you're on the planet Earth and you are a human, she belongs with you, that this is her home.
That's amazing.
And I was like, holy crap, we are spending all of this time and energy seeing our differences, and she only sees the similarities. I was like, oh, it was like a hashtag parenting win moment. I was like, there's a lot we're doing wrong. And I know that they're going to need therapy in some way, but that was really helpful. Like, if we can do this for her, it's possible to help other people see that too. So yeah, it was a really beautiful experience.
That's so fantastic. And what a great lens she's viewing the world through. Like, as you mentioned, like, I think so often we are looking at the differences, even when we're wearing the glasses of like diversity and inclusion, you're still looking at the differences, right? And I get there's lots of work to do about that to make things fair and equitable. However, I love that a young person just sees that we're human beings. To me, that is just such an incredible win from your experience. Yeah. So when you're looking through the lens of diversity and inclusion, you're still looking at the differences. And I realize that there's lots of work that we human beings in the world have to do to make things fair and equitable. And at the same time, I love that your daughter is seeing it through the lens of oneness, basically, which is phenomenal. Like, score. That's amazing.
Yeah, she may still end up and have cats and stay at home, but I doubt it. She's my marine biologist. She wants to travel the world and swim in the oceans. And
oh, that's so good. That's so good. So, as an entrepreneur and a mom and a wife and a daughter, and like all the hats we wear as women, was there anything that was challenging for you to navigate while you embarked on this journey with your family?
Yeah. So just logistically, I think it's the biggest reason more people don't do this is just we had to reorganize our entire lives. We had to make our work completely virtual, which was easy enough. That we had already done, but we had to make the kids' schooling digital. So we put Cora in an online school because she's a little older. For the boys, we bought homeschool curriculum that we travel with. It's like 50 pounds of worksheets because we want them to have an actual pencil on an actual paper. Yeah, just recognizing that you have to be really comfortable with being uncomfortable. So we never know how things are going to play out. And just being able to go with the flow and roll with the punches and all of those metaphors really are important. So knowing your own personality, I think, is really important. I was lucky enough to have a partner who loves change and as much as I do, and is much better grounded than I am. So I get to be the wind in the sails and like, we're going to do this. And he's the keel in the water that makes sure we don't fall over. So we're really well partnered, which I think is critical for making this work. I've had other stories of people who they go and their marriage is shaky to begin with. And they think, well, we'll just get away from our problems. And nope, like it just is going to amplify whatever is already under the surface. And so yeah, just logistically, that was a challenge. And I know I've kind of shared a little bit with you previously. I think one of the things that was really driving me is I had this deep unhappiness that I was keeping really well hidden. And it wasn't so much a running towards the world, it was a running away from demons. And I thought, well, if I can just get out of this, right? And that had been my whole life. Like my whole life had been a running away from my depression and the anxiety. And well, my home wasn't I didn't have a great home life childhood. So I'm going to go to college, and then I'm going to go work at college, and I'm going to work until I'm burnt out. But then I get to have a job, and then I'm going to have a job, and I'm going to be doing that. And I'm going to climb the corporate ladder until I can get married. And like, it was always a jumping and thinking like, well, I'm not happy here, but I'm sure I'll be happy somewhere else. And I'm a really high achiever, really good at checking all the boxes. So my life looked absolutely perfect. I had the master's degree. I had the successful business. I had the 3 beautiful blonde babies. I had the perfect husband. I had the white picket fenced house. Like, I had everything you could check. And then I decided to go on a world tour and live everybody's dream life. And it was about halfway through, and I found myself sitting on a tropical beach, and I was still struggling. I still was wondering, should I file for divorce? Should I file for bankruptcy? Like, where else can I run away? And the nice thing about running halfway around the world is you recognize there's nowhere else to run. And I had this moment of thinking, maybe the thing I've been trying to run away from is me. And this very painful recognition that wherever you go, there you are. And that I had fixed everything possible in my external environment. There was literally nothing I could do to my external environment to make my circumstances better in a way that would make my internals feel better. And I think very few people get that chance to get to, nope, my life is absolutely perfect in every single way, and I am still miserable. And as long as you can keep blaming somebody else or something else in your life for the reason why you're unhappy, it can be really hard to see that, nope, the pattern is you.
Right.
And so that's what led me on this really intense soul journey. I had already been in the world of personal development. I'd already had therapists my whole life, coaches. Like, I am a coach. Like, I know it inside and out, and it still wasn't working. And finally, I did a cacao ceremony in Bali, which I swear is the most cliche of mystical experiences.
Right.
But there it goes.
That like doing ayahuasca in Peru, right? Like,
right?
It's like the clichéest thing ever.
Yeah, it was so funny. And so, that's when the divine kind of interceded and said, hey, it's safe for you to shine. And for whatever reason, that phrase was like the key in the lock. And I started getting download after download. And what really came through is that pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. Why do you go climb a mountain? Because it's fun, because it's hard, right? Why do you go to the gym? Because it's fun, because it's hard. When we are healthy, pain is just fun, part of the challenge. It's part of the fun. And pain is a gift, right? Pain is what allows us to stay alive and to make good decisions. And so we don't try to avoid pain when we're healthy. But suffering is an emotional response to an event. It is the story that we tell in our minds. And so what kind of came through is that I cannot control what happens to me, but I can control the story that I tell about what happens to me. And once I control the story, stories are what generates the emotional response. So if I just know that if I'm feeling anger, fear, sadness, hatred, like all of these low frequency, vibrational, emotional, this is just feedback. And the feedback is telling me that somewhere I have bought into a lie. And that empowers me to go back and say, okay, where in my belief system did I buy into a lie that I'm not good enough? Where is my thinking gunky? And then I can go back and use my emotional guidance system to say, oh, bring me back into truth. And I know that I'm speaking truth, that I am worthy, that I am good enough, that everything is always working out for me, that everyone is always doing the best they can with what they have and where they're at. I know these are true because it elicits the emotional response of love, of peace, of joy, of gratitude, right? And so we can use our emotions as a compass to really reorient our belief system. And then that belief system will become our reality because our beliefs are our blinders. And our brain only finds the thing that we're looking for that will reinforce our belief system. So we will go find evidence that we are not worthy or that we are worthy, depending on which is our dominant belief system. So that kind of epiphany was the real gift, in my opinion. Seeing the world was beautiful, but recognizing that I can be happy in my own backyard, that was the true awakening for me, is recognizing that, yes, travel is fun, but my people, my family, my friends, these relationships, my identity, this is what actually decides the richness of my life, not the location, not the income, not these external peripheral things that we usually use to describe a rich life, but it's who we are and who we're surrounded by.
Yeah. And okay, so for anybody listening to this, like you just summed up, you've had like schooled on Mindset 101, because it truly is up to us what we choose to believe. Like we get to decide. And like you said, suffering is optional. Like that's the meaning that we're creating from the situation. We create any meaning we want, really. Like could create something completely different. And I think a lot of times when people, talk about, manifesting your dreams and creating your amazing life and all this stuff, they can approach it from I'll do these things so I can have this stuff and be this person, instead of I'll be this person who does these things so I can have this experience. And it's like the be, do, have model, not the do, have, be kind of model, right? So I think sometimes as humans, we get things so backwards, and it's such a disservice to us, right? But it's based on our belief system, and that is based on how we grew up and whether or not we did any personal work, whether or not we invested in ourselves, whether or not we took chances, we took risks, and we did the things to stretch ourselves out of our comfort zone. So I love what you shared there. It's just so magical. And I too have shared a similar thing where, like my life looks like a vision board come to reality sometimes, or has, right? And people can be like, oh my God, like you got all these things and you do all this stuff and you know all these people. And I still found myself unhappy, right? I still found myself struggling. I wasn't happy in myself. There was something missing in myself. And similar to you, I had that kind of like overworking addiction. And at the same time, found myself living in a world where I had kind of built around me some really incredible people who were narcissists. And they gave me a lesson on narcissism, which I did not know about before those experiences, right? And I was like, oh, okay. Like there's a lot of elements to this. And I know, like I had to ask myself, how did I create this? Like, how did I magnify these people into my life? And how I've played a role here. It's not okay to just say that person is a narcissist and this is all on them, because I'm a participant in it, right? And so I realized it fed me too. And that was like a really hard thing to kind of understand and really come to terms with, right? That I played a role in this situation and it was not serving me, and I needed to figure out how to back myself out of it, right? So yeah, I resonate with your Bali moment of awareness. And I also think you're a great example of surrendering to the moment, not casting a judgment on the situation, just surrendering into it, observing it, being present in the moment, and being curious, right? Curiosity is our most powerful state. To me, it is the state of manifestation. And so sometimes, and I did this all the time, I'm like famous for saying, oh, well, this has happened, so I'm not meant to do this, or the universe is telling me this, and that, there's things you can garner out of experiences, but at the same time, that's just an interpretation that I put on it. And that could be my own self-limiting belief that I'm not enough or I'm not worthy. And just to say, oh, well, the universe says, this, I shouldn't do this because there's this block or there's this thing. And it's like, does it? Does the universe say that? I don't know that the universe says that. Right? So I learned the power of surrender. Actually, it was through our mutual friend, David Mailer, who really taught me the power of surrender. And I'm forever grateful for that. So if people want to follow you, they want to learn more about you, your family, maybe how they can work with you. Like, tell me, what are you doing in the world these days? If we wanted to hang out with Caitlin, what's our options there?
Oh, I would love for you to come and hang out with us. Yes. So my business partner, Lucas Root, and I have ecstaticway.com is sort of our home base. The methodology that we teach is called the Ecstatic Way, and it is the framework for everything that we do. So if you're an entrepreneur, we have levels of support, business coaching to get you to your first 10K, 100K, 100 million, and 10 million. So we have our business school that helps you with ascending through your business model in a way that you love your work and you love the life that you're building and you love the world that you're creating with the people that you're loving.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
Yeah. If you're not an entrepreneur, we have Ecstatic Life, which is just our general coaching program using the Ecstatic Way for you in whatever work you're doing, whether you're a stay-at-home mom or the CEO of a Fortune 500 company, but just using this methodology to completely shift how you experience your world and consequently how your world experiences you. It's really amazing to see that difference. And so we have retreats or just one-on-one coaching and group sessions. So yeah, those are probably the easiest ways, depending on how you want more of this. And we kind of talked about the stories we tell, but it's also the company you keep. So being surrounded by people who also recognize that your emotions are a compass and that truth feels good. And you can use this to create a reality for yourself that is healing and joyful and replenishing. That's just a lot easier when you're surrounded by other humans who get this work and who support you and see your highest and best self. Like, it's amazing how much more fun life is when you have people who are playing the same game that you're playing. So really just want to kind of create a safe space for people who, and I will say we are spiritual, but open. So every walk of life in between is really welcome, as long as you have a higher up. So as we say, like, check in with your higher ups and see how that's going for you. But if any of that resonates with you, yeah, we'd love to have you come and hang out with us.
Oh, I just so love that. And I really want to thank you for the impact that you're creating in the world, you know, through your travel, through your work, through your marriage, through the people that you're associating with and that you support, and through your kids, because they're going to grow into adult humans who might have a different take on life. And resilience is just so, so important. And I feel like travel helps kids grow into more resilient human beings. And
I can get resilience and compassion.
Right? Totally, totally. You know, so many of us walk through the world, and, you know, I've been in these times myself where we're just unconscious of what's going on. And our role in things. And so being intentional, being conscious about how we're showing up, which I think that you guys are, is so inspirational. And if somebody were to feel inspired to do something similar, you know, pick up their family and travel. I know my best friend, Wendy, she wants to put all of her kids in a RV and travel across the states, which sounds like hell, my own personal hell, but for her, that sounds amazing. And if somebody were inspired, what do they do? Like, what's their first step to change in their life?
Oh my goodness. What is the first step? There's so many steps that I'm like, well, you should test that out, because we did 5 weeks in a camper van with our kids, and like, I'm with you. That's pretty much hell for me.
Right?
I need a lot more space.
Right.
So do a road trip to see how that goes.
That's what I said to her. I was like, before you like sell your house and you buy a van and you commit to this, maybe just rent one and go for a week. Right, yeah.
Or 3. Usually it's by the 3rd week that you want to start killing humans.
Right.
So yeah, I definitely agree that like a test run is really important. But I think the first step, as I think back to that very first retreat where you and I were hanging out, was the vision. Like, you can manifest anything if you're clear enough that you want it and you are passionate about it long enough that it can come, right? So the reason we don't manifest more effectively is lack of clarity, lack of emotional connection, and lack of sustaining that energy long enough for the universe to completely rearrange itself. Like, we took a lot of rearranging. It took us 2 years to go from that first initial vision to, yep, we're ready to hit the road. And like, it was the universe doing its thing and behind the scenes and us doing ours actively in the foreground. And there was a lot of orchestration that had to happen. So get really clear on what you want. figure out what is the emotional frequency that you're really looking for. I think that's the thing that people miss goal setting.
Thanks for listening today. What a great episode. I really learned a lot by talking to Caitlin in this interview. One of the things that jumped out at me was Caitlin's very tactical tip about checking Wi-Fi speeds in your Airbnb. I didn't even know that was a thing. So that is something that I am going to be incorporating into my practice if I'm going to be staying at Airbnbs on my travel for sure. However, truly what I loved is when Caitlin shared that she recognized in herself a tendency to run away. And I think we all have a little bit of that in us. And I'm so grateful that Caitlin was willing to be honest and vulnerable with us today. Many of us have had those moments when we thought we fixed everything in our life and everything looks like it's really great, but we're still not happy. That's the option to look what's actually going on inside. And Caitlin walked us through that in this episode. So maybe you can share with me one thing that popped out in this episode today. I'll see you online. Thanks for hanging out with me. I hope you got at least one gold nugget today. Be sure to grab your copy of the Rich Life Revolution workbook to help you set the foundation for your next level of wealthy. Get it now at richliferevolution.ca, and I'll see you later.